whenever I use the word literally, as in, I literally have nothing clever to say today. I wonder if I'm using it correctly or if I sound like Rob Lowe on Parks and Rec. Hey Booktube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March, and this is my Bookish Week for Sunday, September 1st. Sunday, October 1st. It is October. Victober begins today. Oh boy, that snuck up on me. It did. It snuck up on me hard. I have a selection of books that I may try for Victober, but I don't do the TBR thing because I will buck my own trend and rifle through my books and find something else. So if I do a TBR, that's a sure sign I'm going to break it. But I do have quite a nice little stack set aside for things that, hey, I may want to read that for Victober. Let's see what happens. Let's see. It's going to be a big week for me coming up. I'll tell you about that later. But I finished 3 books this past week. Well, wait, there's a disclaimer because I'm going to review a book that I'm not quite finished with yet, but I'm going to review it anyway because I'm far enough through it that I can do that, safely do that. And let's face it, reading books is not that dangerous unless it's to your ignorance, as I said last week in my Dangers of Booktube video. I'm adjusting this a little bit. There we go. So I will have finished, upon your viewing of this video, 3 books. So let me tell you about those. The first book I finished was a buddy read with Judy Brown, and Judy and I have read several books together. And we first read The History of Violence by Edward Louis a couple weeks ago in Shorty September. And we both decided we really loved his writing and we wanted to read his other book, this one, which we did read. This is The End of Eddie. I can't see that very well. By Edward Louis, translated from the French by Michael Lucy. And History of Violence was his novelization or autofiction or autobiographical fiction of a rape he endured by a man who he met on the street and took home after, within a half an hour of meeting him. And it was absolutely brutal. He talks a lot about his family, the way he grew up, the insecurities, his trauma, and that small, short little book had so much to say and was written so beautifully. I gave it 5 stars. And Judy and I decided to move on to this one, his earlier book, which is also a novel, but again, it's autofiction, so he's pulling directly from his life. This is the story of his childhood and growing up in a provincial French country village, and how he grew up as a gay boy, knowing he was different, desperately trying not to be gay, trying to make himself change, trying to live within the confines of his neglectful, fairly abusive family and community. Again, his writing is beautiful, but what he describes in this book is, to me, even more depressing than History of Violence. History of Violence, he's an adult at that point, so he has some agency as to what he does and how he reacts to the trauma he had endured. In this book, he's a child, and so he has very little control, very little autonomy, and that kind of pours through his writing in this story because he's telling us what damage his parents did, what damage his family did as a unit, and the community they lived in. So he was basically taught an entire childhood that boys and men are supposed to be tough. And he was not. He was a very effeminate young boy. He liked things that are stereotypically girlish. He liked pretty clothes and makeup and dressing up and reading and theater. He liked all those things that are far too often ascribed to being things that girls like. And he was denigrated and insulted and put down and humiliated because of his likes, even by his parents. So it was a very traumatic, lonely upbringing. They lived in a house, there were 5 children, they lived in a house that was falling apart, very poor upbringing, he slept in a bedroom with two siblings, with rain and moisture running down the walls, mold and mildew and not enough food. He was ostracized by friend groups in the neighborhood. Everybody called him names because they identified him as a gay little boy. And it was just traumatic and lonely and brutal of a way to grow up. There were so many things that happened in his childhood that led to him getting to know who he was, that led to him moving on with what he desired and who he wanted to be and who he wanted to be with. And then by the end of the book, he's now about to leave school and goes to a private school to try to escape his beginnings. And the basic message by the end of the book, there's only so far you can escape. You're still the same person. You still came from the same place. But I didn't love this as much as I loved History of Violence, but it was exceptionally good. And his writing is just beautiful. I think it would be difficult for me to pick up a third book of his unless it changed dramatically so that he had more security and success as an adult in being grounded and having the things that he deserves. So, again, another slim, very exceptionally well-written novel by Louise. And the second book I finished was Flying Solo by Linda Holmes. And Flying Solo is the second book Linda Holmes wrote. Evie Drake Starts Over, which I read a while ago and I really enjoyed. It was very cute, contemporary rom-com kind of a book. This one was also, Flying Solo is the story of Lori, who is coming to her great-aunt's home after her great-aunt dies in her 90s. So Lori, out of her five siblings, she's the only girl. She's the only one in the family that is able to go to their Aunt Dot's house to clean it out and wrap up her estate. She lives in Seattle, but she's going back to Cohasset, Maine, to Dot's family home where Lori's entire family is from. And while she's there, she is going through her Aunt Dot's possessions and she finds a carved mallard duck, like a duck decoy. And it was deep in a cedar chest covered with a bunch of other things. And she finds this duck, which is very pretty and very well done. And she doesn't know why her Aunt Dot had it hidden in that cedar chest. What's the big deal about this duck? And for whatever reason, she found intrigue in that. So she started to dig in a little bit to find out the importance of this duck. Did it mean something to her Aunt Dot? Now that she's back in her childhood home, where the town that she grew up in, she is able to go and see her best friend June, and she also runs into her high school boyfriend and love of her life, Nick. So there's some mystery. There's a light mystery as to the origins of the duck. Is it worth anything? What are the importance of some of the other things that Lori is finding around her Aunt Dot's house? And it's kind of a long history of an elderly single aunt who never married and never had children, but had a very adventurous life. And Dot is going through mounds and mounds and boxes of pictures that her aunt took from her adventures traveling or the people that she used to be with. And Lori just wants to find out more about her aunt. And along the way, there's a caper, there's a mystery, there's a little bit of romance, there is family, and kind of going back and looking at how you came up as an adult and the people that you surrounded yourself with. And that little bit of a romance storyline. So it was very cute and very charming. It was light. It was fun to read. And I really actually like Linda Holmes as a writer, and I like her books. You need, once in a while, you need something that it's fun and you want to keep reading, and it just ends well. And this one did. So I was really charmed by it, and I look forward to the next book she comes out with. Now, this book, the third book, is the book that I'm not quite done with, but I'm still going to talk about it. And I'm not going to talk about any spoilers because I don't know any. And this is the last book for the Blind Eye Book Club ever, and it's Louise Erdrich's Love Medicine. This is her first novel. It's Love Medicine #1 in a series of novels that come after this in the Love Medicine series. You don't have to read them in order. It basically just refers to the fact that I think most of the novels refer back to the same very large family. And this introduces us to a very large cast of characters. There's a family tree in the very beginning of the book. This is the wide angle shot. Take a closer look. And you can't read all those names, but it's complicated. And this is a book that is set up in chapters, and each chapter heading is a different year and a different character. So like this one is set in 1957, and it's Lulu's Boys. Lulu is one of the characters on the family tree. And what Erdrich has done in this novel is she's telling the story of all of the members of this family. This is the Cashpaw family. There are Nanapush family. There are Lazar family. There is Lamartine. And the book is almost a string of connected stories. And each chapter is told from a different character and in a different time or a different year. So it kind of goes intergenerationally. Now, the part for me that I don't enjoy about the book is I am not that much of a short story fan, and this reads very much like a collection of short stories, of connected stories. Even though it's classified as a novel, it doesn't have a straight linear narrative. It doesn't have that story that you can trail from beginning to end and you see the character growth. It's not written that way. Erdrich's writing is exceptional. I've loved her writing. I've read several of her books now, and this is her very first one, I think, first novel. And you can see her writing, and it's very good in this book, but you can see in later books how it develops. So I'm really enjoying reading this for the writing alone. The story structure, not so much. And I also love reading a book about a large indigenous family from an indigenous author. So reading that perspective is interesting to me. It keeps me involved. I love the own voices aspect to her books. And all of her books are written like that, and she's a master of it. But yeah, it's in the beginning. There's a couple of chapters that go back and forth in time, but most of the chapters keep going forward later in time. So we see, we read the stories about the older people, the generations, and then we read about their children and their grandchildren and so on. But it was a little convoluted for me. Some of the characters were more interesting to me than others. I kind of related far more to the female characters, and I mean, that's gonna happen. It's gonna be pretty par for the course for me. But it was good. I didn't love it, but it was good. And by the time you watch the video, I will have finished it. So there is no ending to speak of that I would talk about. It just keeps going very similarly through the majority of the book, with going back and forth to hear perspective from the characters. The thing that's linking them together is you'll read one chapter, and the next chapter could be the same event from a different perspective. Or it could be a later character in the generational timeline whose life has been affected by the events in a previous generation or two. So there's linkage, and you can see who the characters and who the family members are that are connected to each other. So there's a very definite trail of connection. It didn't totally work for me, but I really love her writing. It's not a fast read for me because I think I'm working hard to keep everybody straight, but I am enjoying it, so I will be done this weekend, previous to you watching this video. So that's Love Medicine by Louise Erdrich. For anybody in the Blind Eye Book Club, thank you so much for your involvement and your conversations. We've read some great books. We had some great conversations. I do apologize for ending it. I'm I'm sorry that it's ended, but I'm relieved for myself that I chose to do that. And I keep hinting to this, but I will tell you why next week. So thank you so much for joining in with me. Thank you so much for getting on Voxer and talking about the books that we've read. And it turned out really well because I only DNF'd one book. Go figure. I think it was only one. Pretty sure it was only one. So right now, as of filming, I'm not currently reading anything, but I will be because it is Victober. And I do have a few Victorian novels that I'm either going to read or reread, mostly reread. I have a couple of George Eliot books I'm picking up. Two as of now. There may be more. I don't know. And I'm also doing it a little differently. I've got a few books that are contemporary novels that are set in the Victorian era. And I also have a nonfiction book that I wanted to read for Victober. So those are in my stack. I'm not giving you any titles because I'm not sure which ones I will pick. I'm not sure which one I will pick first. And so it's just going to be a surprise for everybody, even for me. That's it for me for today. Let me know in the comments below what you think, if you have any thoughts on these books, what you're doing for Victober, if you're taking part. If not, let me know what you're reading and if you're having a good time with it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.